The whisper of history carries us back to a time of sun-drenched fields and clashing armies. Imagine, if you will, a young man, barely out of boyhood, yet already a king. This is Alexander, son of Philip, king of Macedon. He inherited not just a kingdom, but a burning ambition, a restless spirit that yearned to conquer, to reshape the world in his image. Picture him, perhaps, as a boy, not yet the conqueror of empires, but a curious child, gazing at the star-dusted sky, dreaming dreams of glory that would soon become reality. His father, a formidable warrior in his own right, instilled in him a love of strategy, a keen mind for battle, a thirst for knowledge that extended far beyond the battlefield. Alexander was not just a soldier. He surrounded himself with scholars, philosophers, and artists, fostering a court that blended the might of military prowess with the elegance of ancient learning. His thirst for knowledge was as unyielding as his thirst for conquest. He sought not only to win battles, but to understand the cultures he encountered, the people he ruled. His victories came swiftly, one after another, echoing across the lands. Persia, a vast empire, fell before his relentless advance. He marched with his army, a tide of bronze and steel, across deserts and mountains, through bustling cities and silent plains. Each battle a testament to his strategic genius, his courage, the unwavering loyalty of his men. The echoes of his victories resonated across continents, painting his name in the annals of history with strokes of triumph and daring. He pushed the boundaries of the known world, expanding his kingdom further than any had dared before. But even amidst the fanfare of conquest, the celebrations, the bowing heads of surrendered kings, a quiet solitude clung to him. We can imagine him in the still of the night, beneath the vast expanse of the starlit sky, far from the clamor of his armies. The weight of responsibility, the burden of leadership, the constant pressure of maintaining his empire must have been immense. He carried the hopes and fears of countless people on his shoulders, a burden that no crown could fully alleviate. Perhaps in those moments of quiet reflection, the clamor of battle faded, replaced by the whisper of the wind across the plains, the gentle rustle of leaves in the ancient forests, the quiet murmur of the rivers he crossed. Maybe, in the solitude of his thoughts, he questioned the very nature of his ambition, the price of victory, the fleeting nature of power. The cheers of his armies must have sounded faint against the deep resonance of his own soul. The echo of his conquests, while resounding through history, was likely sometimes dwarfed by the quiet whispers of his own heart. And so, as you drift off to sleep, let the quiet echo of Alexander's story lull you into peaceful slumber. The sun, a pale disk sinking behind the olive groves, cast long shadows across the courtyard of the Macedonian palace. Inside, in a room fragrant with parchment and beeswax, young Alexander, barely a boy, sat bathed in the soft glow of oil lamps. Around him, the air hummed with a quiet intensity, a gentle rustling of scrolls, as he traced his finger across the delicate script. His tutor, the great Aristotle, sat nearby, a figure of quiet authority, his gaze fixed on the young prince with a mixture of pride and concern. Aristotle, a man who knew the vastness of the world and the limits of human understanding, saw in Alexander something extraordinary. It wasn't just the sharpness of his mind, the effortless grasp of complex ideas, though these were certainly remarkable. It was the boy's insatiable curiosity, his unending thirst for knowledge that truly captivated him. He saw a mind that didn't simply absorb information, but actively sought to unravel the mysteries of the universe, to understand the why behind the what. Tonight, their studies focused on Homer, the words of the Iliad and the Odyssey, tales of heroes and gods, of battles and voyages, flowed from Aristotle's lips, painting vivid pictures in Alexander's imagination. He listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally interrupting with insightful questions that surprised even his seasoned teacher. He wondered not only about the tactics of Achilles, but about the political motivations of Agamemnon, about the cultural differences between the Greeks and the Trojans, about the very nature of heroism itself. Aristotle, sensing the depth of Alexander's intellect, guided him gently, carefully unpacking the complexities of the texts, not just as stories, but as reflections of human nature, of politics, of strategy, of the world itself. He didn't simply recite facts, he fostered critical thinking, encouraging Alexander to question, to analyze, to form his own judgments. He showed him how the past could illuminate the present and shape the future, how the stories of heroes could inspire great deeds, and how the study of philosophy could unlock the secrets of the human heart. The quiet rustling of scrolls continued, the gentle scratching of Alexander's stylus against the waxed tablet, a counterpoint to the measured tones of Aristotle's voice. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the subtle sweetness of honeyed wine, a quiet ritual marking the end of another day's learning. Alexander, absorbed in his studies, seemed oblivious to the fading light, his mind already soaring beyond the walls of the palace, to distant lands and legendary battles yet to be fought. He was a prince, yes, but he was also a student, a scholar, a dreamer, a young man shaping his destiny amidst the quiet turning of pages and the soft glow of lamplight. The world awaited him, a vast and unknown expanse, and tonight, under Aristotle's guidance, he was preparing to meet it. And as the last embers of the setting sun disappeared, the quiet work continued, a gentle rhythm of learning that lulled you into a peaceful sleep. Imagine the rugged landscape of ancient Macedonia, a land of rolling hills and fertile valleys nestled between the wild mountains and the shimmering Aegean Sea. This was not a unified kingdom in the way we understand them today, but a collection of tribes, often at odds with one another. Yet within this seemingly chaotic tapestry of competing interests, a powerful dynasty was weaving its own destiny, the Argeads. For generations, the Argead kings had gradually expanded their influence, forging alliances, absorbing smaller tribes, and slowly but surely building a kingdom. This was a slow burn, a gradual accumulation of power, not a sudden explosion of conquest. Think of it like the quiet growth of a mighty oak, its roots spreading deep beneath the surface, unseen but ultimately unstoppable. Each king added a branch, a leaf, a layer of strength to the burgeoning Macedonian tree. Philip II, however, was different. He was not merely content to maintain the status quo. His ambition burned brighter, hotter than those of his predecessors. He inherited a kingdom fractured by internal strife, a land yearning for strong leadership. Philip, with his keen military mind and relentless drive, saw the potential not just for regional dominance, but for something far grander. Before Philip, Macedonia was a land of shepherds and farmers, skilled warriors but lacking the political sophistication of their southern neighbors, the Greeks. Philip changed that. He reformed the Macedonian army, introducing the sarissa, a long pike that revolutionized infantry warfare. He instilled discipline and a fierce sense of loyalty, transforming his army into a well-oiled machine, capable of devastating battlefield maneuvers. But even with his military reforms, Philip couldn't simply conquer. He understood the complexities of the political landscape. He married strategically, forging alliances with powerful families throughout the region. He played his rivals against each other, exploiting their weaknesses and sowing discord. He wasn't just building an army, he was weaving a web of political influence, a complex tapestry of loyalty and obligation. Within the royal family itself simmered a quiet tension. There were ambitious brothers and cousins, each with their own aspirations, each vying for a piece of the growing pie. Philip was a master strategist, both on the battlefield and within his own court. He neutralized threats with ruthless efficiency, yet he also rewarded loyalty and competence. The whispers of intrigue and plotting were ever present, a low hum underlying the outward display of unity and strength. Even his own son, Alexander, would later prove to be a player in this complex game of power, his own ambitions carefully cultivated beneath a father's watchful eye. The seeds of Alexander's future conquests were not just sown on the battlefields of Greece or Persia, but here, in the heart of Macedonia, in the intricate political maneuvering and the ever-present tension within the royal family. The seemingly quiet kingdom was a crucible, forging the ambition, the skills, and the determination that would soon reshape the ancient world. And as you drift off to sleep, remember the quiet strength of this nascent empire, quietly growing, preparing for its moment on the world stage.
The air in Aegae hung heavy with the scent of lilies and unspoken grief. Philip, the king, was gone. A swift illness, they said, a fever that took him in the blink of an eye. One moment he was the powerful king of Macedon, the conqueror of Greece, the father of a brilliant son. The next, a stillness settled over the palace, a stillness broken only by hushed whispers and the soft sobs of mourners. His reign, a whirlwind of ambition and conquest, had abruptly ended. Alexander, barely 20 years old, stood where his father had stood, a young man suddenly burdened with a kingdom. He was a prince, yes, but the crown felt impossibly heavy on his head, colder than any winter wind. The weight of expectation pressed down on him, the weight of 1,000 eyes, 1,000 hopes, 1,000 fears. He had been groomed for this, trained since childhood in the arts of war and statecraft. Yet the reality was far different from the lessons learned in the sun-drenched courts of Pella. The whispers started almost immediately. Doubt, like a creeping vine, threatened to choke the fragile roots of his power. Some whispered that he was too young, too inexperienced to hold the reins of such a vast and volatile kingdom. Others questioned his legitimacy, suggesting that Philip's many enemies would rise to challenge his claim. The generals, hardened men who had fought beside Philip for years, eyed him with a mixture of respect and apprehension. Would he be a leader like his father, a force to be reckoned with? Or would he falter, crumble under the pressure? Alexander, though young, possessed a quiet strength, a steadfastness that surprised even his closest advisors. He knew the whispers, felt the weight of their skepticism. But he also knew the depth of his own ambition, a fire that burned brighter than any doubt. He moved with a careful grace, a calculated stillness, taking his time to assess the situation, to solidify his position. He addressed the generals, speaking with a calm authority that belied his age, promising justice, stability, and the continued glory of Macedon. He listened to their concerns, their anxieties, offering reassurances with measured words. Sleep came slowly that night, nestled between the silken sheets of his new bed. But sleep eventually came, as it always does, light and deep as the river that winds through his homeland. As dreams took over his consciousness, he didn't dream of battles, of conquests or glory, but of a quiet evening spent with his father, talking of the weighty burden a king carries, of the duty and the love that must carry that burden along. The weight of the kingdom was real, but his resolve was stronger. His love for his people a guiding light through the long night. His journey had just begun, and he would face whatever came next, not with the bravado of his youth, but with the steady wisdom of a soul prepared. And as the first rays of dawn touched the palace walls, a new king awoke, ready to meet his destiny.
Imagine the sun dipping low over the Aegean Sea, casting long shadows across the Greek landscape. The year is 336 BC, and a young king, Alexander, stands poised on the precipice of history. He's inherited a kingdom, Macedonia, but his ambitions stretch far beyond its borders. Greece, a land of independent city-states, each with its own proud history and fierce rivalries, was ripe for unification. But it wouldn't be a swift conquest, not in the way some might imagine. This wouldn't be a whirlwind of battles, but rather a slow, deliberate advance. Think of it as a wave, gently rolling across the shore, each ripple subtly changing the landscape. Alexander began not with a thunderous invasion, but with careful diplomacy. He understood the power of persuasion, of recognizing the shared culture, the common lineage that connected these fiercely independent cities. He spoke to their pride, to their shared heritage, reminding them of the glory of ancient Greece, a glory that had been fragmented by years of conflict. He didn't demand submission, he offered partnership, a vision of a united Greece, strong and prosperous under his leadership. The initial steps were cautious. City after city he visited, not as a conquering king, but as a diplomat, a leader offering his hand in peace. Some cities, wary but intrigued, agreed to his terms, slowly joining the growing coalition. Others, clinging to their independence, resisted. These were the ones that required a more decisive approach. Yet even then, the battles were not characterized by overwhelming brutality. Alexander's military genius lay not just in his tactical prowess, but in his ability to swiftly secure victory and minimize bloodshed. He aimed to unite, not destroy. His armies marched across the land not with the wild abandon of a barbarian horde, but with the measured tread of a seasoned professional force. They moved along well-trodden paths, through olive groves and sun-drenched vineyards, past ancient ruins whispering stories of a time before. The soldiers themselves, hardened veterans, moved with a quiet confidence, their discipline a testament to Alexander's unwavering leadership. As they journeyed, they were not merely soldiers, but representatives of this burgeoning unity, spreading the message of a new era for Greece. Imagine the murmur of conversations in the marketplaces as his soldiers passed through, the subtle shift in loyalties, the quiet acceptance of a new order. Each conquered city was not treated as a vanquished foe, but as a newly welcomed member of a greater whole. Alexander sought to integrate them, not to subjugate. Garrisons were strategically placed, not to oppress, but to maintain order and facilitate trade. Administrators were appointed, not to extract wealth, but to manage affairs fairly, to foster cooperation. This was not a violent overthrow, but a patient, almost organic growth of power. A quiet assertion of dominance, achieved more through diplomacy and strategy than through sheer force of arms. Each step of this slow, steady march across the land brought Greece closer to becoming the unified power it was destined to be. It was a testament to Alexander's vision, a testament to the enduring power of both military might and careful diplomacy. And as you drift off to sleep, picture the sun setting on this newly united Greece, bathed in the golden hues of peace and promise. Imagine, if you will, a city bustling with life, the ancient city of Gordium in Phrygia. The air hangs heavy with the scent of spices and wood smoke, a gentle evening breeze whispering through the narrow streets. At the heart of the city, within the royal palace, lay a knot. Not just any knot, mind you, but the Gordian knot. Legend speaks of it as incredibly complex, a tangled mass of cords so intricate, so baffling that no one had ever managed to unravel it. For centuries, it remained a puzzle, a symbol of the seemingly insurmountable. The knot itself was tied to a yoke, a wooden bar used to join oxen to a cart. The prophecy surrounding it was simple yet profound. Whoever untied the Gordian knot would rule all of Asia. Generations of kings and scholars, clever minds and strong hands had attempted the seemingly impossible task. They tugged, they pulled, they strained, their fingers growing sore, their patience wearing thin. Each attempt ended in failure, the Gordian knot remaining stubbornly defiant, a testament to its complex entanglement. The knot became more than just a puzzle. It became a symbol of fate, a challenge to human ingenuity, a test of willpower. Years passed, and the story of the Gordian knot spread, carried on the wind, whispered in hushed tones. Then a young man, a Macedonian prince named Alexander, arrived. Alexander was not known for his patience or his penchant for intricate puzzles. He was known for his ambition, his boldness, his unwavering determination. He approached the knot with a curious calm, unlike the frantic energy of those who had come before him. He did not spend hours trying to unravel the delicate threads, painstakingly separating one from another, nor did he attempt to carefully untangle the intricately woven strings. No, Alexander surveyed the Gordian knot. He saw not a puzzle to be solved, but a problem to be overcome. He saw a symbol, one that represented the rigidity of tradition and the limitations of conventional thinking. He saw the frustration, the wasted time and effort of generations who had been shackled to the idea that the solution must conform to a certain method. Then, with a decisive movement that surprised all who witnessed it, Alexander drew his sword. It wasn't a weapon of destruction in that moment, but a tool for swift, decisive action. With a single, clean sweep, he sliced through the knot, not patiently untangling each thread, but boldly severing the Gordian knot in half. This wasn't a defeat of the knot's complex design, it was an assertive solution. In that moment, Alexander's approach wasn't about solving the puzzle in the way everyone else had tried, but in understanding the underlying problem and applying an unorthodox solution. This simple, direct act resonated with the people around him. This boldness, this defiance of traditional thinking was a novel response to a stubborn problem. The crowd gasped, their initial shock slowly giving way to awe. Alexander, with his swift and unconventional solution, had not only fulfilled the prophecy, but had also provided a powerful metaphor for his approach to life, to conquest, to leadership. Boldness, decisiveness, a willingness to challenge established norms and to forge a path that might be unconventional, yet ultimately successful. The Gordian knot, once a symbol of the insurmountable, now stood as a testament to the power of unconventional thinking and the courage to defy expectations. And so, as the whispers of the legend fade into the night, remember the lesson of the Gordian knot. Sometimes the most effective solution lies not in meticulous untangling, but in a bold, decisive stroke. Let this story settle you into a peaceful slumber. Sweet dreams.
The sun beat down on the vast, dusty plains, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and the distant rumble of marching armies. This was the heart of the Persian Empire, once a jewel glittering under the sun, now facing a storm. A storm brewed in the west, a relentless wave of conquest that threatened to wash away centuries of power and glory. Think of the sheer scale of it, armies stretching as far as the eye could see, a sea of men and horses, their movements a slow, inexorable tide creeping across the land. Imagine the soldiers, weary yet resolute, their footsteps echoing across the ancient earth. Each man carried the weight of his own story, a tapestry woven from family, dreams, and the hard reality of war. They marched for days, for weeks, the landscape slowly changing, the familiar giving way to the unknown. The sun was a constant companion, its relentless glare baking the land, turning the very air shimmering and hazy. But they marched on, driven by a fierce determination, by the unwavering belief in their cause. The Persian Empire, for so long the undisputed master of its domain, felt the ground tremble beneath its feet. The once proud cities, jewels of architecture and learning, now felt the shadow of this approaching storm. Each city represented a hard-won victory, a testament to generations of rulers and their unwavering ambition. Now those same cities braced themselves, preparing for a clash that would determine their fate. The whispers of fear and anticipation hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that could be felt even amidst the bustling preparation for war. Think of the strategists, their minds consumed by maps and plans, meticulously charting every move, anticipating every counteroffensive. Each decision held monumental weight, the potential to shift the balance of power in an instant. The weight of command bore down on them, the burden of countless lives hanging in the balance. Sleep was a fleeting luxury, snatched in brief moments between plotting and strategizing. Their minds, sharp and calculating, burned late into the night, fueled by ambition and fear. The clash itself was a spectacle of immense proportions, a brutal ballet of clashing steel and thunderous war cries. The air vibrated with the energy of 1,000 battle cries, the ground shaking under the weight of charging cavalry and the relentless advance of infantry. The clash of civilizations played out across vast, sprawling battlefields, the sun obscured by dust and smoke, as if the heavens themselves were weeping for the fallen.
The relentless pursuit of victory pushed the armies ever onward. Retreat was not an option. The goal was nothing short of the total conquest of a vast empire. Even after each hard-won battle, the pursuit continued, pushing relentlessly into the heart of Persia. Each hard-fought victory only fuel for the next. The endless march, the grinding weight of war, all for that elusive prize, the complete and utter defeat of a once mighty empire. And as the sun finally sets on this era, remember that even the mightiest empires eventually yield to the relentless march of time and the tides of history. Now close your eyes and drift off to sleep. The year is 334 BC. Imagine the sun dipping low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the plains of Asia Minor. A hush falls over the Macedonian army, a hush broken only by the gentle murmur of the Granicus River as it snakes its way towards the sea. Before them lay Persia, a vast empire shimmering with gold and boasting an army seemingly without end. But for Alexander, son of Philip, this was not a daunting sight, but an opportunity. This was the Granicus, and it would be the testing ground for his ambition, his genius, and the courage of his men. The river, a seemingly insignificant obstacle, was actually a clever defense chosen by the Persian forces. They lined the banks, a dense wall of spearmen and cavalry, their numbers far exceeding those of Alexander's relatively small army. Darius, the Persian king, likely underestimated Alexander's youth and perhaps even his abilities, believing the sheer weight of numbers would be enough. But Alexander saw something different. He saw not insurmountable odds, but a chance to seize the initiative, to strike swiftly and decisively. The battle began with a furious clash. Picture the scene: the sun reflecting off the polished bronze of shields, the clash of steel on steel, the thunder of hooves as cavalry charged. Alexander, leading from the front, as was his custom, focused his energy on piercing the Persian lines at their weakest point. He himself rode into the thick of the fight, his actions inspiring the same reckless courage in his men. It was a chaotic ballet of violence and skill, a storm of human determination amidst the tranquil setting of the riverbank. He targeted the Persian elite, the immortals, the king's guard. These soldiers, known for their unwavering discipline and fearsome reputation, were met with the fury of the Macedonian phalanx, a tightly packed formation of spearmen whose unwavering strength and coordinated movement were nearly unstoppable. Imagine the weight of those spears, the unwavering pressure of the shield wall, pushing back the tide of Persian warriors. The river, initially a barrier, now became a treacherous obstacle for the retreating Persian forces, many losing their footing, weapons, and lives in its current. The battle raged for hours, but the tide turned. Alexander's tactical brilliance, combined with the unwavering bravery of his Macedonian hoplites and the relentless energy of his cavalry, proved too much for the Persians. Darius, witnessing the rout of his army, did not even wait to see the outcome fully, retreating swiftly and leaving a trail of defeat in his wake. The victory at Granicus was not just a military triumph, it was a psychological victory. It shattered the myth of Persian invincibility and announced to the world the arrival of a new force, a young king who would change the course of history. As the sun finally set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a sense of quiet accomplishment settled over the Macedonian camp. The river, now calm once more, reflected the stars emerging one by one in the night sky. The whispers of victory mingled with the soft sounds of the night, a gentle reminder of the hard-fought battle that had reshaped the ancient world. The Granicus River, witness to a decisive victory, flowed quietly on, carrying the echoes of courage, ambition, and the relentless march of Alexander's empire towards the east. Let those images and sounds lull you into a peaceful and restful sleep. The sun beat down on the plains of Issus, a shimmering heat haze blurring the already distant horizon. Imagine yourself there, the air thick with the scent of dust and sweat, the low hum of anticipation hanging heavy. Alexander, the young king of Macedon, stood poised, his army a disciplined wave ready to crash against the Persian tide. Darius, the great king, held his own vast forces, a sea of men and horses, confident in their numbers. But numbers alone couldn't guarantee victory. This was more than a clash of armies, it was a collision of empires, a meeting of east and west under the unforgiving sun. Alexander, with his finely honed Macedonian phalanx, a wall of spears that could withstand any onslaught, began the dance of war with a calculated precision. The Persian right flank, initially strong, began to crumble under the weight of the Macedonian advance. Picture the clash of bronze on bronze, the screams, the thunder of hooves, all slowly fading into a muted rhythm in the drowsy heat. It wasn't a furious, chaotic battle, but rather a precise dance of strategy and skill. The Persian king, Darius, found himself caught in the maelstrom. He saw his meticulously planned defenses failing, the disciplined ranks of his own soldiers breaking, retreating into the confusion. He fled the field, not in disgrace perhaps, but in the face of a force far more skillfully wielded than he'd anticipated. His retreat was the beginning of the end. The victory at Issus wasn't just a battle won. It was a blow to the heart of the Persian Empire, a shattering of the illusion of invincibility. The great king had run. The weight of that knowledge slowly settled upon the vast Persian Empire. Years passed, the sun setting and rising on countless skirmishes and sieges. Alexander pressed onward, pushing deeper into the Persian heartland, each victory strengthening his resolve, each defeat of the Persian forces chipping away at their morale. The murmur of those lost battles eventually reached the ears of Darius, who rallied yet more men for a final stand. That final stand came on the plains of Gaugamela, a new stage for a new act in the same long-running drama. The Persian army was immense, a sprawling host, a testament to the resources of a vast empire. They were confident, but this time they were fighting a different king. Alexander had learned from Issus, had refined his tactics, and he approached the battle with a calm, calculated brilliance. His understanding of the terrain, his understanding of his enemy, shone through in his deployment of troops. The battle was fierce. Imagine again the sounds, but now layered with the added knowledge that this was the last, great, decisive battle. This wasn't just another clash, but the final, brutal crescendo of a long-fought war. Alexander's cavalry, cutting through the ranks, again shattered the Persian lines. The phalanx, like an unyielding tide, pushed the Persian lines forward, creating chaos among the ranks. The scene is chaos, and yet, strangely, beautiful, like a storm raging over an ocean. Darius, witnessing the inevitable collapse of his army, fled once more. This time, however, his flight was not a tactical retreat. It was a desperate flight from ruin.
With Darius' escape, the Persian Empire effectively ceased to exist as a powerful, cohesive entity. The great Persian Empire, once so vast and seemingly impenetrable, had finally fallen. Sleep now, and let the echoes of those battles fade into the quiet of the night.
The year is 332 BC. The sun dips low over the shimmering Mediterranean, casting long shadows across the sands. And on the horizon, a city stands firm, Tyre. A proud island city, a jewel of the Phoenician coast, Tyre had for centuries defied all comers. But now a new force, a new tide, was rising against its walls. Alexander the Great, with his vast army, was laying siege. Imagine the scene. Thousands of men, their hopes and fears mingling with the salty sea air. They had marched from Greece across the deserts and mountains, their determination as unwavering as the sun itself. Before them, Tyre, a seemingly impregnable fortress, stood defiant. The city's walls, thick and high, rose from the sea, a testament to centuries of accumulated skill and resilience. The Tyrians, skilled sailors and traders, were not easily intimidated. The siege was not a swift affair. It was a slow, relentless grinding down of wills. Alexander's engineers, ingenious men, built a causeway, a massive road stretching across the water towards the island. It was a monumental task, requiring immense labor and resourcefulness. The Tyrians, in turn, countered with relentless attacks, their ships swarming around the construction, attempting to disrupt the work, to break the relentless advance. Day after day, week after week, the siege continued. The soldiers toiled under the scorching sun, building, fighting, and enduring the constant threat of attack. For those on the walls of Tyre, there was a constant tension, a vigil against the encroaching army, the ever-present threat of a breach. They watched as the causeway grew longer, inch by agonizing inch, each stone a testament to Alexander's resolve. The sounds of the siege were a constant hum in the background of their lives. The clang of hammers, the creak of siege engines, the shouts of soldiers, the cries of the wounded. Even at night there was little peace. The sounds of the sea, usually a comforting presence, now carried with them the whispers of approaching ships, the anticipation of another assault. Sleep came in short, fitful bursts, punctuated by the fear that the next morning might bring the city's fall. The Tyrians fought with incredible bravery, fueled by their love for their city and their fierce independence. They launched daring night raids, inflicting casualties on the besiegers, striking at any weak point in the construction. Their courage was undeniable, but they were facing an opponent with almost limitless resources and an almost unyielding will. Finally, after months of relentless effort, after countless acts of courage and sacrifice on both sides, the causeway was completed. The Macedonian army surged forward, the final assault beginning. The battle raged, a maelstone of steel and blood, as the Macedonian soldiers fought their way into the city. The city, despite its fierce resistance, eventually fell. The siege of Tyre was over. The city's long and proud history had come to an end. But the story of its resilience would forever linger in the mists of time. Now breathe deeply, and let the quiet of the night embrace you. Sleep now, and dream. Imagine, if you will, A time long ago, a world bathed in the warm glow of the sun. It's the year 331 BC. A young man, Alexander the Great, stands on the shores of Egypt, the scent of the sea mingling with the desert air. He dreams of a city, a magnificent city unlike any the world has ever seen. Not a city built for war, but for knowledge, for beauty, for the pursuit of understanding. This is the seed from which Alexandria will bloom. He chooses a site where the Mediterranean Sea kisses the edge of the land, a place of natural beauty, a place where the East meets the West. Builders, architects, and dreamers gather. Slowly, stone by stone, the city begins to take shape. It is a city of grand scale, its streets wide and straight, designed for both the bustling commerce of the day and the quiet contemplation of scholars. This is the seed from which Alexandria will bloom. He chooses a site where the Mediterranean Sea kisses the edge of the land, a place of natural beauty, a place where the East meets the West. Builders, architects, and dreamers gather. Slowly, stone by stone, the city begins to take shape. It is a city of grand scale, its streets wide and straight, designed for both the bustling commerce of the day and the quiet contemplation of scholars. The harbor, a vital artery, pulses with the rhythm of ships arriving from distant lands, bringing with them precious goods, exotic spices, and, most importantly, ideas. Years turn into decades. Alexandria grows, its buildings rising towards the sky, reflecting the ambition of its founder. The Library of Alexandria, a magnificent structure, is at its heart. Here, scrolls from across the known world are carefully collected, meticulously copied, and patiently studied. Scholars from Greece, Egypt, Persia, and beyond come together, sharing their knowledge, debating their ideas, and pushing the boundaries of human understanding. The very air seems to hum with the energy of intellectual exchange. Think of the hushed whispers in the reading rooms, the rustle of parchment as scholars pore over ancient texts. Picture the lively discussions in sun-drenched courtyards, the passionate arguments about philosophy and mathematics, astronomy and medicine. Imagine the quiet concentration of a scribe carefully copying a treasured manuscript, ensuring its preservation for generations to come. This was not merely a library, it was a living, breathing organism, a crucible of knowledge. It wasn't just about the accumulation of books, it was about the vibrant exploration of ideas, the collaborative search for truth. Within its walls, the wisdom of the past illuminated the path to the future, inspiring countless breakthroughs and innovations. The very air of Alexandria buzzed with discovery. Beyond the library, the city thrived. The Museum of Alexandria, a center for scientific research and artistic expression, attracted the brightest minds from across the world. Artists created breathtaking sculptures, poets penned immortal verses, and mathematicians unveiled the secrets of the universe. The city pulsed with a vibrant cultural energy, a melting pot of traditions and perspectives, all united by the common pursuit of knowledge and beauty. As night falls on Alexandria, imagine the soft glow of lamps casting long shadows, the murmur of conversations fading into the gentle sounds of the sea. You feel the quiet hum of a city devoted to knowledge, its legacy living on through the ages, a testament to Alexander's vision. A city where dreams were not merely dreamt, but painstakingly built, brick by brick, scroll by scroll, and idea by idea.
Let this peaceful image drift you gently into slumber.
The sun beat down on the backs of Alexander's weary soldiers, the air thick with the scent of unfamiliar spices and dust. They had marched for what felt like forever, leaving behind the familiar lands of Persia, pushing ever eastward into the heart of India. Imagine the scene, a vast, undulating landscape stretching to the horizon, a sea of green and gold under the brilliant sun. The land teemed with life. Towering trees shaded strange and wonderful creatures. Birds with plumage of impossible colors flashed through the air, and rivers, wide and slow, snaked their way through the fertile plains. Alexander, ever driven, led them on. He dreamed of reaching the edge of the world, of conquering lands no Greek had ever seen. Each new village brought a glimpse into a world quite unlike their own. The people, with their dark skin and rich clothing, welcomed some of the invaders with curious hospitality, while others viewed them with apprehension, their faces etched with a quiet dignity. Their customs were a tapestry woven from threads of ancient traditions, their beliefs as diverse as the landscape itself. They encountered mighty rivers, their waters reflecting the sky like polished mirrors. Crossing these natural barriers was a monumental task, testing the soldiers' endurance and the ingenuity of their engineers. Imagine the sounds, the rhythmic splashing of oars, the creak of boats against the current, the quiet murmurs of the men as they navigated the treacherous waterways. The cities they encountered were marvels of a different kind of architecture, buildings crafted from materials unlike anything in Greece, soaring high into the sky. The bustling marketplaces were a sensory explosion, the exotic aromas of spices and unfamiliar foods mingling with the chatter of merchants and the bleating of animals. The air thrummed with a different kind of energy, a quieter energy perhaps, yet one that pulsed with a distinct rhythm of its own. Alexander's army, though initially triumphant, began to tire. The relentless march, the unfamiliar climate, the constant skirmishes with local rulers all took their toll. The vastness of the land seemed to stretch endlessly before them, a challenge that even Alexander's ambition could not fully conquer. The whispers of home, of familiar faces and comforts, began to grow louder in the hearts of the weary soldiers. The longing for the familiar Aegean Sea, the olive groves, the gentle hills of Greece became a silent current running beneath the surface of their daily toil. The tales told around the evening campfires spoke of mythical creatures, of powerful kings and courageous warriors, weaving a rich fabric of legend and reality. The stars, unfamiliar constellations in the night sky, offered a sense of wonder, a connection to something vast and timeless. As the soldiers drifted to sleep under the Indian stars, their dreams likely carried them back to the familiar shores of Greece, even as their bodies rested in the heart of a land so different, so vast, so powerfully captivating. The eastward push, though relentless, was beginning to yield to the slow, steady pull of home. The empire stretched, but the human heart, even Alexander's, yearned for rest.
The year is 1842. Imagine the vast, shimmering heat of the Indian plains. Picture yourself, if you will, a soldier in the British East India Company Army. The sun beats down relentlessly, day after day. The air hangs heavy, thick with dust and the scent of unfamiliar spices. You've marched for months, perhaps even years, across this foreign land. The landscape itself seems endless, a tapestry of ochre and brown stretching to the horizon. Your boots are worn, your uniform faded and stained. The food is monotonous, the water often scarce and questionable. Every muscle aches, a constant dull throb that accompanies your every step. Sleep offers little respite, the ground hard and unforgiving, the nights filled with the strange calls of unfamiliar creatures. Morale, once high, has begun to dwindle. Whispers snake through the ranks, like shadows stretching across the dusty ground. You hear grumbles about the length of the campaign, the lack of supplies, the seemingly endless expanse before you. Some men speak openly of their longing for home, for familiar faces, for the simple comforts they left behind. Others mutter darkly about the leadership, questioning the wisdom of this continued advance. There's a fatigue deeper than the physical, a weariness of the soul, a slow erosion of hope. The whispers grow louder, coalescing into a murmur that permeates the entire army. It's a low, persistent hum of discontent, a collective sigh of exhaustion. You see it in the slumped shoulders of your comrades, in the vacant stares directed at the relentless sun, in the way they drag their feet with each weary step. It's a tangible weight pressing down on the entire expedition. The general, Lord Ellenborough, far away in the distant capital, senses this shift in the atmosphere. He receives reports, letters filled with anxieties and concerns. He sees the dwindling resources, the mounting casualties, the erosion of the very fabric of his army's resolve. He understands that this relentless push, this tireless pursuit, is not sustainable. There's a recognition of the futility of further expansion, a sense that the cost far outweighs the potential gain. He weighs the options, the glory of further conquest, against the brutal reality before him. He considers the lives of his men, the immense strain on the resources of the empire. The images of weary soldiers, their spirits broken, their bodies worn to the bone, flash in his mind. He doesn't want to see any more men fall. The decision, when it comes, is not easy. It is a heavy weight, a burden borne by a man far from home, weighing the ambitions of an empire against the well-being of his soldiers. He makes the call to turn back. The order, when it arrives, is met with a mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief for the cessation of the relentless march, the promise of rest and return. Disappointment, perhaps, for the unfulfilled ambitions, the goals left unachieved. But the prevailing sentiment, the one that ripples through the weary ranks, is that of a weary but profound gratitude. The long march home begins.
The air hung heavy in Babylon, thick with the scent of dates and the perfume of exotic flowers, a stark contrast to the growing unease that settled over the city. Alexander, conqueror of the known world, lay within the palace walls, his strength slowly ebbing away like the tide receding from a vast shore. He had arrived in Babylon, a city of ancient wonders, with dreams of further conquests, of pushing the boundaries of his empire even further. But Babylon, it seemed, held a different destiny for him. The whispers began subtly, like the rustle of palm leaves in a gentle breeze. A fever, they said, a sickness that took hold with an unsettling persistence. At first it was dismissed, a minor ailment for a man accustomed to hardship and battle. After all, Alexander had faced down countless foes, endured scorching deserts and icy mountains. Yet a mere fever threatened to subdue him? But this was no ordinary fever. It clung to him, sapping his energy, dimming the fire in his eyes that had once burned so brightly. The great king, who had marched his armies across continents, now struggled to rise from his bed. His once sharp mind, capable of masterful strategy and brilliant diplomacy, clouded with bouts of delirium. He would murmur words of his past glories, of battles won and kingdoms conquered, his voice a low drone, barely audible above the hushed tones of his worried attendants. The palace, usually a vibrant hub of activity, fell quiet. The usual bustle of courtiers and advisers was replaced by a solemn hush, broken only by the occasional sigh or whispered prayer. The sounds of the city itself seemed muted, as if even Babylon held its breath, waiting, watching as the powerful ruler dwindled. His generals, those fierce warriors who had fought by his side through countless campaigns, now stood helpless, their own strength seemingly diminished by their leader's failing health. They watched with heavy hearts as the man who had inspired such unwavering loyalty faded before their eyes. The dreams of further expansion, the ambitious plans that had filled their conversations for so many years, now seemed distant, fading as quickly as Alexander's life force. Days bled into nights, each sunrise revealing a more fragile version of the once invincible Alexander. The vibrant energy that had once filled every room he occupied was replaced by a stillness, a profound quiet that spoke of the inevitable. The scent of healing herbs and the soft sounds of worried whispers now filled the air, a constant reminder of the slow, agonizing decline of the great king. The city of Babylon, accustomed to power and grandeur, watched in silent anticipation as the final chapter of Alexander's life unfurled, a story written not in triumph, but in the quiet resignation of mortality. Even the mighty are mortal, and even in Babylon, death finds its way. With Alexander's sudden death in 323 BCE, a vast empire, stretching from Greece to India, found itself without a clear heir. Imagine, if you will, the whispers that must have traveled through those sprawling cities and across the dusty plains, a sense of uncertainty hanging heavy in the air. His generals, the men who had fought alongside him, the men who knew his brilliance and his ruthlessness, looked at each other, each with their own ambitions gleaming in their eyes. No single successor could hold the unwieldy empire together. The vastness of it, the sheer diversity of cultures and peoples proved too much. Think of the different languages spoken, the various gods worshipped, the countless customs and traditions that formed the rich tapestry of Alexander's world. It was a tapestry, now cruelly ripped at the seams. Instead of unity, there followed a period of bitter conflict, a series of wars that shook the foundations of the known world. The empire, once a symbol of Alexander's unparalleled ambition, fractured into several smaller kingdoms. Imagine the clash of armies, the thunder of cavalry charges, echoing faintly through the centuries. These were not mere skirmishes, but protracted wars fought with brutal efficiency, each general vying for power, each carving out their own dominion. The Diadochi, as these successor kings were known, carved up the empire among themselves. Ptolemy took Egypt, establishing a dynasty that would last for centuries, leaving behind the magnificent libraries of Alexandria and a legacy of scientific and cultural flourishing. Seleucus secured the vast territories of the east, establishing a kingdom that stretched from the Indus River to the Mediterranean, a land that would later become a vital crossroads of cultures. Antigonus and Cassander and others fought too, their struggles reshaping the map of the ancient world, their ambition echoing across the generations. But even as these powerful men fought for dominance, the impact of Alexander's conquests remained indelible. His military innovations, his strategic brilliance, they continued to influence warfare for centuries to come. The very concept of a unified Hellenistic world, a world where Greek culture and ideas intermingled with those of the East, was Alexander's lasting legacy. Greek language, art, architecture, and philosophy spread far and wide, blending with existing traditions, creating a vibrant, syncretic culture. Imagine the subtle shift in styles, the merging of artistic forms, the slow assimilation of ideas. The fusion was not always peaceful, sometimes violent, but nevertheless profound. Cities were founded, trade routes flourished, and a new era of interconnectedness dawned, all thanks, in part, to Alexander's relentless drive and his unparalleled conquest. The vast empire he created may have crumbled, but the seeds of its cultural and political legacy were sown deep, continuing to blossom and bear fruit for centuries to come. So, breathe deeply now. Let the image of that fragmented empire fade, replaced by the peaceful rhythm of your breath, the gentle lull of sleep. The story is almost finished. The wind whispers secrets through the dry grasses of Persia, a land Alexander knew so well, a land he conquered. Imagine him, not on the battlefield astride Bucephalus, but alone, perhaps on a high plateau, the vastness of his empire spread beneath him like a tapestry woven from conquered kingdoms. He'd tasted victory, the heady wine of power, the cheers of his legions ringing in his ears. But the echoes fade. The silence of the heights is a different kind of conquest, a quieter, more persistent battle. He dreamed of a world united, a world without borders, a world where the clash of arms gave way to the harmony of cultures. A noble dream, some would say, yet how many lives were broken, how much blood spilled upon the altar of this ambition. He unified vast territories, yes, but at what cost? Think of the countless families grieving their lost sons, husbands, fathers, swept away in the tide of his relentless campaigns. The victories felt hollow, perhaps, in the quiet hours, when the cheers of the multitude were replaced by the rustling of the night wind. His friends, his companions, the men who had fought alongside him, who shared his triumphs and his hardships, many fell before him. He outlived them, their faces fading into the mists of memory, replaced by the faces of ever-changing courtiers, men motivated by self-interest, not loyalty. He yearned for connection, for genuine understanding, but the closer he got to the apex of power, the more distant he became from simple human bonds. Did he ever truly feel understood? Did he ever feel truly seen? The loneliness of the summit is a lonely place indeed. To stand above the world is to stand apart from it. The weight of responsibility, of expectation, must have been immense. Every decision, a life or death choice, bearing consequences rippling outward, touching countless lives. He was a king, a god to many, yet even gods can feel the chill of isolation. He marched on, expanding his empire, but the space within him remained largely unfilled, a chasm that no amount of conquest could bridge.
Picture him now, in the stillness of the night, gazing at the star-studded sky, reflecting on all he had achieved and all that had been lost. The weight of his crown, a heavy burden both literal and metaphorical. The echoes of battles fought and won, the whispers of his own mortality, a relentless reminder that even the greatest conqueror must eventually yield to the inevitable. His story is one of ambition, triumph, and ultimate solitude, a testament to the price of greatness and the profound loneliness that can accompany it. Let the image of Alexander, gazing out at the vast emptiness, soothe you into sleep. Let his story remind you to cherish the connections in your own life, the warmth of human companionship, the simple joys that true greatness cannot always buy. Sleep now, and dream of gentler landscapes.
The sun dips low, casting long shadows across the plains of Macedonia, much as it did centuries ago. Imagine, if you will, a young Alexander, not yet the great, but a boy with bright eyes and a restless spirit. He's learning to ride, his small hands gripping the mane of a spirited horse, the wind whispering secrets in his ears, secrets of empires and conquests yet to come. He's absorbing the stories of heroes, tales of daring deeds and legendary battles, stories that will shape his own destiny. These are not stories of violence alone, but of courage, of leadership, of unwavering determination. Feel the gentle rhythm of the hooves on the earth, a soft lullaby in the twilight. As he grows, his thirst for knowledge is as boundless as the horizon. He studies with Aristotle, the greatest mind of his time, delving into philosophy, strategy, and the art of war. Imagine the quiet rustle of papyrus scrolls, the soft glow of lamplight, the murmur of scholarly discussions in the hushed halls of the academy. These are the sounds of learning, of growth, the steady beat of intellectual exploration, a comforting hum that settles the mind. Then comes the rise of a young king. The weight of a kingdom rests on his shoulders, but his spirit remains unbroken. He faces challenges, of course, intrigues and rebellions, moments of doubt perhaps, but his resolve remains firm. Picture him gazing out at his vast army, a sea of faces looking up to him, their trust a powerful current flowing between them, a silent affirmation. Let the image of that army, slowly marching onward, be a slow, calming wave. His conquests are legendary, but they are not just tales of brutal warfare. They are stories of strategic brilliance, of adapting to unexpected circumstances, of learning from both victory and defeat. See his army slowly, steadily advancing across the sands of Egypt, the sun beating down, but their purpose unwavering, a steady march, a purposeful rhythm. Let the image of them marching slowly across those arid lands lull you into a deeper state of rest. Imagine the hushed awe of foreign courts, the respectful greetings of conquered kings. Imagine the hushed whispers of his name echoing through vast cities, a murmur that gradually fades into a peaceful stillness. He pushes the boundaries of the known world, but always with a thirst for understanding, for exploring the cultures and knowledge of those he meets. Let this quiet exploration be your own gentle inward journey. The weight of empire begins to weigh heavily. He faces loss and betrayal. Feel the gentle breeze whispering through the olive groves, the rustling of leaves, a soft sigh in the quiet night. Let this natural rhythm soothe your soul and allow your anxieties to drift away. His story ends, leaving behind a legacy that spans millennia. But let's not focus on the end, but on the journey, the slow, steady progression of a man who dared to dream, who faced challenges, who ultimately sought a greater understanding of himself and the world around him. Let the echoes of his story, the quiet whisper of history, lull you into a peaceful slumber. Sweet dreams.